Welcome to the Harriman Institute 4+1 Pathway Info Session. My name is Claire. I'm an administrative assistant at Beyond Barnard. So if you have questions about how to access our advising services, you can feel free to chat that to me or email me after the event. But we are excited to have Professor Alex Cooley here from the Harriman Institute. So without further ado, I will turn things over to him.
Hey, thanks so much, Claire. Thanks for joining. So yeah, my name is Alex Cooley. I am in the political science department at Barnard, but for the last 6.5 years, I have also been directing the Harriman Institute here at Columbia. I'm physically in the International Affairs building, which is where we're still housed. The Institute is part of Arts and Sciences now. It used to be part of SEPA, but like all the regional institutes, it was moved 11 years ago. So this is different than, say, the SEPA BA/MA program. It's a different entity. So I'm going to divide the presentation into two sections. One, I'm going to give you an overview of what the Institute is and what the program is and some of the networks and career tracks that it leads to. And then I will give a kind of just more practical few slide PowerPoint with some of the information about deadlines and requirements and so forth. And then we can sort of open up to any kind of questions that you might have. The Institute was founded in 1946. I mentioned that because we're celebrating our 75th anniversary. We were the first academic center of this kind in North America, dedicated to the study back then the Soviet Union, now in Russia. It was founded as the Russia Institute. It was renamed in the late 1980s after a generous gift from Averell Harriman, who was former US ambassador to the Soviet Union, also governor of New York, failed presidential candidate, and general sort of engaged philanthropist. And really, we're kind of an object of historical study ourselves. We're like the den of what used to be known as Sovietology, the study of the Soviet Union. There's all sorts of kind of historical spaces here, like the monitoring the Soviet TV room and places for different sort of, lectures and engagement and things. But the bottom line is we've been training specialists in Russia and this part of the world really for 75 years now. And the aim back then was to basically study the enemy, find enough knowledge sort of in the scraps and different sources available out there to prepare students back then in careers in government, intelligence, security, academia, a few journalists. So a lot of things have happened since then. One, the Soviet Union collapsed and we had a choice to make. The choice was, do we study still Russia? What's our purpose? Is Ukraine in? Is Central Asia in? And in general, we went maximalist, like we study everyone in the post-communist sphere, even Mongolia. So Eastern Europe, the Balkans, Central Europe, Baltic states, the Caucasus, Central Asia, Ukraine. All right, so our counterpart at Harvard, the Davis Center, Ukraine is not part of their formal program. They have a separate Ukrainian Studies Center. Okay, so what do you do with like a regional studies degree? Isn't this kind of weird now that there's no longer a Cold War kind of thing? And the answer is there are a number of kind of classical field trajectories, but also new fields in which we have extensive networks in which we place students. So we still place students in places like the State Department, Department of Defense, a placement each in the last couple of years, one to work on Poland, the other one to work on Russian security. And we still have a kind of an academic track. So some of our students have gone on to history PhD students, some Slavic studies, some political science, and they find that doing the MA in regional studies gives them a better platform to apply for PhD programs than just having a BA in hand, right? And it's also given the MA thesis is a chance to do a really substantial research project based on original research that will impress a PhD committee. So those are kind of classical fields, but we also find we're placing students in new fields. So a real growth field where in the last couple of years, we've placed more than half of our students is in the area of political risk analysis. What is political risk analysis? It is investment advisory services that can focus on particular sectors, particular countries, particular individuals, right? If you're checking out the past business dealing of oligarchs in Ukraine or Russia and want to know how that's going to affect your merger. So this is a massive field right now, and especially in New York, but we've also placed students in London, in Hong Kong, as well as small and big shops here in New York City. And they can put to use their kind of understanding, interdisciplinary understanding of regional studies, politics, economics, language, use their facility and local sources to create or to gather this kind of knowledge for what turns out to be a lot of bespoke projects in this area. Also, we place students in a lot of NGOs, particularly non-for-profits. We have a tradition, we're placing students in foundations, human rights organizations dedicated to transparency, a lot of which are based in New York. And so, for instance, we have 2 students that we're placing in year-long internships as they do their work at Human Rights Watch. We just found out about those today. But in general, we have also some dedicated internships. So I think, back during the Soviet Union, there were no NGOs in the former Soviet Union, right? So that wasn't really a field. But now that's one area of strength. And also some students in the private sector too, like that go on to Wall Street again with this portfolio and background knowledge. So what makes our program? What is it, and why do we think it's good? Well, first, it's rigorous, and by that I mean this isn't just an MA program that's put together on paper. This is a designed, resourced, dedicated program that we take extremely seriously. That's the centerpiece of our institute. So it's a 2-year program. It can be done in 15 months, but it is designed as a 2-year program, and I'll get to why. But it is bookended by 2 dedicated Harriman classes. One is Legacies of the Soviet Union that everyone takes. It's taught by me traditionally, and that's like this interdisciplinary understanding of the different Soviet legacies, different fields, economics, political science, journalism, human rights, civil society. And many of these sessions are taught by guest lecturers. And one of the nice things about having done this remote, we used to get sort of one guest speaker, but now with Zoom, we can actually bring in a couple of guest speakers each segment, so we can contrast different generations, different genders, different style. If historians do elite top-down history versus social from the bottom-up history, you can get so much in this class. And so it's like and we have the budget for it. It's a really sort of unique class. So this sets up the whole program, and we're very self-critical, right? You read a lot about the history of the Institute, Sovietology, debates about area studies, its relationship to policymaking, right through to the present, some new controversies. Russia's annexation of Crimea, in Russiagate and the media frenzy that surrounded, in this sort of week, who's influencing who. So that's your start. Then you can take a number of different classes to round out your program. What's nice is that if you're interested in Ukraine, you can concentrate in Ukraine. If you're interested in issues of like corruption and governance, you can do that. It's not well known because we don't use our own course designations except for legacies, but we provide 30 classes on the region to various entities across the university. So Slavic studies, political science, SEPA classes, all the SEPA classes are open to you with priority that are classes that we support. And so, if we see that we really need a class and it's not offered, we provide it. I'll say something also about the people who teach them. We do rely on adjuncts for a lot of these classes, but these adjuncts tend to be tenured professors in the tri-state areas who want to teach an extra class for us because it's exactly in their field of focus, right? So we have professors who are tenured at CUNY, at Rutgers, at SUNY, all who look to and have been providing classes to us because they can teach things like Ukraine and New York, the politics of the Caucasus, security in Central Asia, things that there's not enough demand for where they are in their home institutions. They're part of their community, as well as the dedicated faculty that we have. Professor Martin and myself from Barnard, Professor Snyder and Fry and poli-sci, from Columbia. So we have a really wonderful selection of classes. And then we add classes where we think there are new important issues. So for instance, we have a course called Writing Digitally on Eurasia, which is all about prepping you for online writing, because We tend to also place some of our graduates in media tracks, and you learn everything from how to maintain informational security to sort of codes and conducts of writing online, along with actual assignments. And that's taught by managing editor of a news organization called EurasiaNet, which is a partner affiliate of the Harriman Institute, physically located here. Even though they're separate editorially, our students have the opportunity to write for them if they want. And also EurasiaNet covers our events. So that's another part of it. So you put together the program, and then your final year, you write your thesis. We have a dedicated thesis class for you. This is one of these things, oh, go out, write your thesis, touch base with your advisor. No, you meet as a class every week over the course of a year to learn about the craft of research, about resources and practice, and then actually to formulate your topic and execute it over the course of a year. And that is taught by our dedicated Director of Graduate Studies, Elise Giuliano, who's also taught at Barnard before, but she is a senior lecturer now in the political science department, and she is dedicated to Harriman, and she also teaches Russia-related classes, right? So these are people who are here exclusively for you, right? So there's a rigor to the program. Second, the program is adaptable. Like I mentioned before, you can tailor it to a particular region or country. We have people who do Central Asia, we have people who do Russia and China, we have people who combine a functional interest with an area, public health policy and Russia, or security and Central Asia, or climate change and Tajikistan, right? These are all sort of possible combinations. And again, this is something that can be fitted to adapt to where you go. And then finally, we think the program is super enriched by a number of co-curricular opportunities that are out there. First and foremost, the 150 events that we organize at the center, many of them in partnership with other New York-based institutions, or like NYU, Museum of Moving Image, or other units here at Columbia too. But we also have other opportunities. They include being part of something that we call the University Consortium that we've been part of for 5 years. This is a group of 6 universities internationally, 2 from the US, us and Harvard's Data Center, 2 from Europe, Sciences Po in France, and St. Anthony's College at Oxford, and 2 universities in Moscow, Higher School of Economics and MGIMO. And we meet regularly 2-3 times a year, and our students are part of this. They participate in week-long workshops and discussions about tripartite relations, right? And the goal here is to get a much better understanding of other sides' perspectives on critical issues in foreign policy, international relations. We've been doing it remote for a year, but this year we promised everyone that they would have a makeup trip, and we're already planning that we will bring everyone to Athens, Greece, because that's the place where the Russians can come. Where they accept the Sputnik vaccine in late January. So we're going to resume that too. So we'd like to offer this opportunity to everyone who passes through the program to be involved in at least one of these. Other opportunities, we have something called the PepsiCo Foundation Fellowships, which are devoted to supporting research and travel to the region. And these were founded in the 1980s by Pepsi-Cola because they wanted to beat out Coke for entry into the Soviet market. The Soviet Union collapsed, but luckily we kept the endowment. And this is really can provide you support anywhere you want to go from Hungary to Kazakhstan, basically, if it's for a research project. So we have research funds. And then finally, we have internship opportunities. I mentioned these connections that we have. We also have dedicated internships where you get first dibs. We put them out openly to the university as a whole, but we have special arrangements with the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, who has an office in every post-communist country, including some of the obscure ones like Belarus, Uzbekistan, as well as a UNICEF internship too, which also has an office in every post-communist country, in addition to these. So, and many times students will do like all 3 things in the summer. They'll study language somewhere for a short intensive course, they'll go do a research project, and they'll do an internships, right? So back to why this is a 2-year program, we think this summer is like super, super important because you can do so much and we can provide you with the support to do that. So those 3 pillars, I think, makes this the best program out there in terms of Russian regional studies. Of course, I would think that, but it's something that we've worked really hard over the last 5 years to shape it into something that's very contemporary and adapt to sort of student needs. So That's the sort of the overall overview rather of the institute and its its priorities. I'm going to share my screen now and talk to you specifically about the BA MA program, just some of its sort of details, and let's put this over here, and some of its requirements, right? So as a 4+1, you would enter into this having taken maybe a couple of classes or 3 classes your senior year, second semester senior year. And as I mentioned, that summer becomes important. So we're going to talk a little bit about the eligibility, the application process, faculty leads and cohort supports. So who's eligible? Barnard's eligible, and Columbia College is eligible, as well as School of Continuing Professional Studies. So this is part of the Pathways program, and current juniors must have a GPA of 3.5 or higher, and waive the sort of GRE requirement. I am the faculty advisor for this. Here is the main prerequisite though. It's language, right? We need you to have 3 years worth of language, by the time you're admitted into the program, right? So if you're planning on doing this and you don't have the language yet, you need to find a way to get some intensive study of a regional language. Russian is one language, but it's not the only one. Polish, Ukrainian, we have considered Turkish before, depending on the proposed program on study. But that is really the big kind of requirement for admission. Why do we say that? Because we want you to work on your linguistic skills while you're at the program, but that is going to be sort of like a prerequisite for doing a lot of other things that are engaged with the region, right? We want you to be able to go to the region with some language facility so you can actually do your research and gather your data. The regional focus and flexibility I've talked about, and our students engage with almost all of the former Soviet countries and much of Eastern Europe as well. And it's always exciting to see what they do. And I mentioned the summer opportunities and fundings, right? The research travel, the internships, and as 4+1 students, you will be eligible for this before you actually start your formal graduate studies, because I know that summer falls in an awkward sort of stage for you. Okay, so here's the part that I really want to talk to you about, and that is funding for the program. So at the moment, we have full tuition opportunities that's funded by the US-Russia Foundation for 2 BA/MA candidates per year, right? Full tuition, we supplement it with a stipend. So this has been a particularly appealing program because we can get students engaged with the region at the BA/MA level. And this doesn't then preclude you going to law school or getting an MBA or doing some of the other things. But what we want to do, and what the US-Russia Foundation wants to do with the BA/MA program, is to integrate the study of the region and add it onto your undergraduate experience so that you come out of Barnard and then Columbia with really this comprehensive understanding of the region. So we will once again offer 2 full scholarships in the next round of admissions, and several Barnard students have been awarded these before. They've gone on to all sorts of different fields. Actually, a recent one, Anya just got a job at the Council on Foreign Relations, so that's very exciting. So found out about that. So this, I think, is the big part of this. If you do not receive the USRF BA/MA scholarship, some students do also receive some tuition support. It varies, but of course we understand that funding is a big part of this, and we want to sort of try and make this happen for you. But I'm just sort of flagging that because that really is a unique kind of part of the funding landscape. Just kind of broad sort of 4+1 pathway info for you there. Some application deadlines for seniors. November 16th, 2021. For juniors, April 22nd, 2022. If you have any questions about this, you can shoot them over to me, and I will also put you in touch with our programming coordinator. But there is a kind of fluidity to the process. But please get in touch with your questions. Don't make assumptions about whether this might not be right for you. You might not be eligible. Ask us. We can also give you a lot more detail about particular students and their career trajectories. I mentioned our record is good. We pretty much place every student into a job. And the vast majority of them are field related over the last few years. Our classes have also expanded as I think we've become a little more successful. And I'm happy to sort of talk more about that in substance. Thanks so much.
I think we have time for questions if people want
Absolutely.
to
Yep.
put some in the chat or unmute yourself.
Yeah, Esther.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. Two quick questions. One of them, when you say the language requirement for like post-colonial, post-communist states, would Hungarian count as a language for that?
Yes.
Okay, and if we wanted to qualify for the US-Russia grant, should we also pick up some Russian in between now and then?
The US-Russia grant wants to see some sort of Russia-related work. So I don't think that Russian itself would be a prerequisite, and it's not. But there would be a preference for students who are more interested in Russia-related issues and topics than just straight Central Europe, to be very honest.
Okay.
But the language itself is not one of those prerequisites.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Nazira?
Hello, Professor Cooley. Thank you so much for all that information. I was also wondering about the language requirement. If you are a native speaker of, like, let's say Russian, would you be able to place out of that 3-year language requirement?
Yes, absolutely. Just take the relevant proficiency test that's administered by the relevant department, in this case, sort of, Slavic. And yeah, you would have that.
Okay. Also another question. Is there like I know there's the prerequisites are like kind of flexible, but is there like a specific major that one should pick up if they would like to apply to the Harriman Institute, like political science or like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. So one of the really kind of cool and interesting things about Russian area studies and regional studies was that it was actually, even in its Sovietology moment, it was founded as an interdisciplinary place, right? So originally, and the Russian Institute here was founded on 6 faculty members. One was poli-sci, one was Slavic, a couple of historians, one was law. And there was this belief that to understand a region, you need to come at it from various disciplines. So interdisciplinarity is in our DNA. And as a result, we've had Barnard students that I would say the 2 most popular tracks are Slavic and political science, but we've also had architecture students and we have also had history students. So I think, I don't think there's necessarily a preference. I think students in those areas have an interest in Russian foreign policy or Russian culture, so it's sort of, it's a logical continuation, but really we accept students from all fields. And that's always been the case sort of with this kind of field of study.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much. Is there also like a timeline available of right now, if let's say I'm currently a freshman, what's a good timeline for me to make sure that I get all of my prerequisites done in time? Because I was told by someone that I'm not sure if this applies to the Harriman Institute specifically, but someone else who was doing a 4+1 said that they had to do most of their major requirements early because they have to start the program in their senior year, so earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, Claire would know more about SEPA. Latest, my understanding is SEPA is pretty, intense. You're spending kind of your senior year over here as opposed to there. At the 4+1 that we have, your experience at Barnard senior year would be a much more mixed experience. right?
Okay.
We wouldn't expect your entire year. We would expect a few classes. The number I hear is usually 3, but my colleague can give you more precise information on that. So you don't have to sort of chalk up your whole kind of year. I would say, though, the sooner you engage with us, the better, just in the sense that there might be opportunities even for undergraduate travel and projects that we have. There might be, seminars or talks that are of interest, right? So the earlier that you start engaging with us, the more information we can provide you, but the more you can start thinking about what makes sense in terms of like the logic for your program. But you certainly are not expected to devote your entire senior year to being here. Like we're not that degree of we don't have those numbers of sort of prerequisites.
I understand. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure thing. All right. So if there are any other questions, let me know, or feel free to email me. I'm acooley@barnard.edu. You can find me online, and we are. We figured out ways to make remote work. We had things like virtual internships and so forth, but this is so much better. So I encourage you to get details about the program, but also visit the website of the Institute. You'll see event listings, you'll see testimonials from students who have been through the program. You'll get a calendar of events, and just in general, you get more of a flavor of what this program is about. So even though it started with these kind of Cold War secretive origins, the program itself really is very dynamic. It's very contemporary. It's very interfacing with a lot of kind of contemporary sort of places of employment. So yeah, and I'm happy to answer anything else that you might have after this as well.
Sorry, one more really quick thing. The application, the April one for juniors, will that just be available on the Harriman website, or should we like email you about that?
Yeah, you can email me about that, or Rebecca Dalton. We have converted the website, so I'm not sure if everything is functionally on there the way it used to be. That should go on, I believe, in January. But yeah, if you send me an email, I'll steer you to the right application.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Thanks,
Also,
everyone.
I'm sorry, one question I had about funding. So I know you said that there are 2 sponsored full tuition funding opportunities from the U.S. Russian Foundation. Is there any way that, aside from those, is there also additional funding that, if for instance you're a full need student, is there any way to get funding outside of that?
There is. Here's what happens: that in February, before you start your graduate, your full graduate year, you get placed into a sort of a competitive funding consideration with the other admitted students. And at that point, we generate a list of sort of funding. From the general pool, we offer about 4 full scholarships a year, and then a number of partial scholarships. Some half funding, some quarter funding. The list is quite dynamic, moves back and forth as candidates consider sort of other offers, but we do about 4. There are also some thematic scholarships. So for instance, if you're interested in Ukrainian studies, there's the possibility there. But yes, it's not just USRF or nothing. We try and provide funding to everyone. And the thing that we've done that we're really sort of also proud of, the second year tuition is less than the first year tuition, but we've managed in recent years to support everyone at the second year, which has helped as well. So yeah, there are a number of sort of pathways. The BAMA fellowship is nice, just because it's sort of clear and laid out. But if you don't get that, then you are still considered for funding and maybe offered something. Yeah.
That's great to hear. So the only difference between the U.S. Russian Foundation fellowship and full ride scholarship would be that the former has a stipend. Is that correct?
The full ride fellowships all carry stipends. So yeah.
Oh,
That's not-
okay, I understand.
It's externally sponsored as opposed to sort of internally generated.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, if we have no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But thank you for being here. And if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to Professor Cooley and the folks at Harriman. And if you have questions about how Beyond Barnard can support you in your application process, those can come to us at beyondbarnard@barnard.edu.
Awesome. Thank you, Claire.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you both. Yeah. Bye.